a stormy night in Philadelphia, with only a kite, a house key, and wet hemp string, Benjamin Franklin captured lightning in a bottle. Over 260 years later, with a little resourcefulness, ingenuity, and grit, we're not only capturing energy from the sun and wind, we're storing it. So even when the sun isn't shining and the wind isn't blowing, we're still powering America forward. As the nation's leader in energy storage, and as the world's largest generator of wind and solar energy, we're ensuring Americans have the energy they need, whenever they need it. This is our era. This is America's energy era. Next Era Energy.
All right, hello Charles, I'm Michelai Graham. I'm a freelance technology and business reporter. Today we're going to be talking about the work that you do with IBM and your Hbcu program. Do you want to go ahead and give us a little bit about yourself and the work you're doing?
Sure. I am the IBM public sector leader for quantum computing, and in that role, I work with government agencies to help them become what we call quantum ready here in 2021. And I am also a member of BDPA. Perry asked me to talk today about the Hbcu program, and it's exciting times now in quantum computing. Background, I graduated from Howard University. If you can see my picture right now, you see about 5 degrees or 6 degrees. My whole family graduated from Howard University. I have 3 children, all in STEM, and it's a passion of mine, and HBCUs as well. And right now, quantum is a very hot field and a hot topic, and I'm hoping to shed some light on
All right, amazing. So I know we're going to start with your presentation. Do you want to go ahead and get started now?
that. Absolutely.
Perfect.
Certainly.
I'm going to turn my camera off for your presentation as well, but I'll be here in the background.
So over a year ago now, the IBM Hbcu Quantum Center was established by several folks here at IBM, Dr. Kayla Lee, Dr. Scott Crowder, Dr. Anthony Annunziata, Dr. Jay Gambetta, also Dr. Zizzuto, Dr. Victor Brown. Many of us had a desire to see the HBCU community not get left behind in IBM Quantum. And so we reached out to a bunch of HBCUs to get the program going. What you see here on the slide deck is a chandelier. That chandelier is a chandelier which essentially housed inside of a cryostat. And a cryostat is a device that allows you to bring down the temperature. At the very bottom of that cryostat is a quantum chip. And what you see in that chandelier are an ingress and egress capability for cooling, using a cooling substance to get it down to 0.5 Kelvin. Also, what you see here is, if you look closely, you'll probably see some lines coming out of that. And those lines that come out of that are control lines that control the chip that allow you to do quantum processing. And so quantum processing is a little different than classical computing processing. It uses quantum phenomenon like superposition, entanglement, and interference to calculate process information. And that is a little unique in and of itself. And so I'd encourage people to go out to the IBM website and to log into what we call our Q experience, which is our cloud environment, to allow, and anyone can get an account, and you can go in and log in and kind of, experiment and understand what quantum computing is all about. The HBCU Quantum Center was established, as I mentioned, by Kayla, Benita, myself, and many others. And next slide. And what it is it's a center, it's a multi-year investment by IBM, which is designed to prepare and develop the talent at the HBCU level in STEM disciplines. And the goal is to obviously sustain quantum research and development education. And the program was started at Howard University, and it is the Quantum Information Science and Engineering program. And it is to strengthen the research efforts of faculty and of the students, and to provide opportunities for scholarship, fellowship, and internships with HBCU undergraduates and graduates. And so you may have seen the public announcements. It's been all over the internet. IBM is investing $100 million in this, and it's a multi-year effort. It's a really big deal. It's a culmination of a lot of work by a lot of people. What you see here in the picture is Benita Zizzuto, who is one of the leads, and also Tia Silas, who is IBM's diversity and inclusion. She's a person in that organization. So this has support from the BEN group within IBM, which is the Black Network, and everybody is really excited about the investment from IBM. The IBM Quantum Center's mission is, of course, to foster and educate collaboration on joint research, ultimately to create more diverse quantum-ready workforce, as I mentioned before, for students studying everything from physics, chemistry, and computer science, and even business. And the center's members collaborate across their respective institutions and are building regional interactions to strengthen both the faculty and the student engagement. And so here's a picture. Next slide, please. Here's a picture of the IBM Quantum 1 quantum computer, or System 1. This system was developed about a year and a half ago now, and it was the first kind of standalone productized quantum computer that IBM built. As you can see, it's a very sleek design. We got one of the foremost best designers to develop this. And so we are now on System 2. And for those of you who have been paying attention, IBM announced its first on-premise quantum computer at the Cleveland Clinic a couple of weeks ago, where the System 2 is being deployed. Now, IBM has over 29 quantum computers today. As I mentioned, most of those quantum computers are available for folks to use in our IBM Quantum Quantum Experience Cloud environment, and a lot of them are be used for free. All you have to do is get a login and start to play with software. The software that we use is called PISKit. That software is a part of the open source community. So developers and all students can go out and get a login and start exploring quantum computing today. And so the HBCU quantum program is a special program. These are the components of it. Essentially, it is a quantum hub. The hub includes multiple universities that can gain access to a hub environment, and that hub is being managed today by Howard University. Dr. Thomas Searles, who is a PhD physicist at Howard University, is the leader of the Quantum Hub at Howard, and we're very proud of Dr. Searles. and his efforts. Him working with Kayla Lee have established have established a really good thing there. It also includes quantum education. The HBCU quantum program includes a virtual online class in quantum information science or quantum computing, and that is through the IBM Skills Academy. That class is a train-the-trainer class where IBM brings in the professor, teaches them how to administer the class, and then they go back and as students. That's been working well. The program also includes quantum computing research grants to researchers that are working in the field in STEM at HBCUs that align with the IBM research mission. So there's an extramural component of this where we provide research grants. Also, there's a board inside of the IBM Quantum program of members in the university system. And so the point of the IBM Quantum program is not just to help HBCUs and African Americans writ large be a part of this quantum revolution, but it's also to provide opportunities for young people to become quantum leaders and to shape the field as it moves forward. Right now, quantum computing, quantum sensing, quantum networking, which are all a part of quantum information science, is in its very early stages. Although there's been a lot of research in physics underneath of this for over 100 years, we're still, I believe, at the cusp of the quantum revolution. Next slide, please. So right now, the IBM Skills Academy and the learning and as well as the access component includes the following schools. And you can see the list there, Clark, Batesville, Grambling, Hampton, Howard, Johnson C. Smith, Norfolk, North Carolina A&T, North Carolina Central, Southern, Stillman, Virginia State, and West Virginia. And what you see here on the slide is a workshop that was pre-pandemic, and it was the first workshop that we had in quantum computing at Morgan State. And so you see in that first workshop, we did a KISS Kit workshop where we went through and showed the students how to log in the KISS Kit, how to write their first quantum program, how to get access to the quantum machine. And it was a very successful event. And we were proud of the Morgan State University, Morgan State Bears, for being the first one to host a quantum workshop. Next slide. Next slide, please. Can anyone hear me? Did I lose connection?
No, those were the next slides that I had. Let's see.
Oh, okay.
This one?
No. You can go backwards. I think there was a little delay.
Okay.
Yeah, so right there. So this is a picture of a quantum event that we had pre-pandemic at Bowie State University. As you can see, the young people in this picture are very excited about what they're learning, to be able to understand some of the cutting edge science, technology, engineering, math content, in particular quantum, is a very exciting thing. And so this is just a picture of one of the classes we through. So finally, what I'd like to say is, for those of you who want to get involved in the IBM HBCU quantum program, the two people who lead this is Kayla Lee and Benita Zizzuto. And their contact information is there. I can also Slack you my email address if you want to learn more about it. Again, quantum computing is something relatively new, and there's tremendous opportunity in research and development, as well as entrepreneurial opportunity as well. And so with that, I'm going to close, and I'm going to essentially open it up for questions. And if there's any questions out there, I'll be happy to take your questions.
Now, when any department goes out into the community, we're able to hear the positive responses. And that is a great feeling to know that what we're doing is affecting and impacting the community. In the past, we've heard negative responses about the city being unclean, there's a lot of trash on the ground, or the police, we never see them.
It was important for our residents to feel as though that government was going to be responsive.
People were relying on a 9 to 5 being able to contact about any issues that they had.
We put together a very innovative app that gave our residents access.
IBM assisted the City of Sea Pleasant to incorporate Watson into the My Sea Pleasant app. Any resident who has a question that they want to ask about the city on a 24-hour basis can go into the app and click on Watson to ask it a question.
We had a tree fall, and instead of having to call City Hall, I just went and used the chat and said that there's a tree falling in the middle of the street, and they sent Public Works out to get it for me.
I've used it to report potholes that are in the street. I've used it to see what's going on in the city.
No matter where our Public Works director is, no matter where our employees are, they're able to log in because it is on IBM Cloud and get the service request in real time and respond, in a quick and efficient manner.
It allows them to get to us sooner. On a weekend doesn't matter because it comes through, I'm going to get it. So I love it. I don't see how we ever did without it.
Well, mute now.
Are there any questions?
Yeah.
Yeah, how you doing?
Yeah, sure.
My name's Alonzo Quince out of Chicago. I hope you can hear me fine.
I can hear you, Alonzo. How are you?
Okay, real good. I'm a software developer. My background is from out of chemistry and chemical engineering. I used to work in academia and did research under the direction of PhDs for about 20 years. And this new technology, quantum computing, is quite attractive to me. Having did some level of work with quantum mechanics, working with instruments and devices that use that type of technology. And I have some questions to ask as a developer, as a software developer, besides the obviously quantum CPU speeds, what other type of advantages are to be gained for people who are in the development space, and also kind of leveraging my chemistry background, how can I mix the two, both IT as well as chemistry? The reason why I went into IT was, well, the ultimate purpose is one day is returning back and bringing that technology into the chemical engineering industry. I hope that you can digest all that in response. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you for your question. I think for your background in chemistry, it's been a very exciting time in quantum computing because there are certain types of things that we just can't do in the chemistry area. As you probably are fully aware, in order to truly understand the dynamics of chemical reactions, we quickly run out of ways to be able to model those processes. An example would be molecular processes and how we use computers to understand those. We use a lot of modeling techniques that don't really capture all of the information that's going on between chemical reactions. There are so many variables involved when you have molecules and atoms interact. These are all what we call many-body problems. And the way that we model them today in chemistry is insufficient. And so the promise of quantum computing allows you to open up the state space to capture more information. And that's really, most of the work has been, geared towards chemistry today. An example would be, right now we have a quantum network partner, and IBM has a quantum network of paid people who pay for access to quantum computing. And one of those members, and we have over 140 members that are paid clients that have access to quantum computers behind the firewall. One of them is Daimler Chrysler. And Daimler Chrysler is interested in trying to create battery technology that would last longer. And so therefore, they are interested in lithium ion batteries. And the lithium ion molecule is being studied today in what we call the noisy intermediately scale quantum computer, which are the quantum computers today, which have very limited numbers in terms of its qubit size, and we're working on the noise factor. And so right now, Daimler Chrysler has actually computed with a certainty all of the ground state energies around the interaction between lithium ion batteries. And they've published that research in Nature. And so quantum computing is giving them an opportunity to understand how those reactions occur in lithium batteries that they couldn't understand in the past. And so another example is, there was a Nature article that IBM published when we first started looking at quantum computing, where they analyzed all of the interactions of the hydrogen atom and of the water molecule. So what it is doing is incenting us to be able to look at chemistry in ways that we could not do before. And so that is probably the first use case that is incenting material science and other areas that have folks really excited about quantum computing. And so for your background, there's an area called algorithm development that a lot of folks are applying their specific background in chemistry and computers to the quantum space. Frankly, there's a set of problems that quantum computing can do that classical computing can't do, but you need a classical computer in order to operate a quantum computer. And so your IT skills translate, and your chemistry skills translate. And so right now, I'd say that you're in a pretty good position to be able to take advantage of quantum computing in chemistry.
I think I know where you're going with that.
Mm-hmm.
In order to do quantum computing, or effectively to do modeling, we're talking about Maxwell equation, as well as wave dynamics.
So exactly. So you hit the nail on the head. So when you think about quantum computing, it uses the concept of Schrodinger's wave functions.
Yeah.
And it uses what we call Hamiltonians, which is an array space operators to act on those. And the Hamiltonians are essentially energy descriptions of an array of data. And that data is captured in the Hilbert space, which is a three-dimensional space, using tensor mathematics, right, to understand how those interactions occur. Now, keep in mind, quantum computing uses super cold environments and Josephson junctions in our qubits for transmons. And the reason why is because at very low temperatures, you take things down low, and it makes sense. It's a logical concept. Then molecules don't bounce up and down. Things do not
Well, you have a matrix and you can get greater throughput of subatomic particles as opposed to
interaction.
having that amorphous. You have a lattice and it's pretty much in a steady state as you lower the Kelvin scale, ideally down to minus 270 degrees, and when you have that type of lattice, you get greater throughput, I would imagine, in subatomic particles, particularly electrons. That's the general ideal, but it's hard to attain that. Having worked with cryogenic equipment, doing research in academia, I see and been where, so you have to work in cahoots with computer scientists and materials scientists and engineers in order to achieve those effects. Of course, yeah.
Well, one of the things IBM is doing is it is putting those quantum computers available. It's putting them in our cloud available to researchers to go ahead and use, because the biggest work right now is to improve the science in this field. And so right now, IBM's Q network and our quantum membership, including the HBCU community, is publishing in all areas of quantum information science. And that those areas, for a use case perspective in quantum computing, includes chemical simulation and understanding of how the interactions work. Also, the nexus of machine learning, right? There's an opportunity there. There's also material science. These are areas that will all be improved with quantum computing. So you're right. There is the physics of how the quantum computer operates, which is a very interesting concept for computer and electrical engineers, as well as physicists. And then there's the operational capability of what it provides you, which is also something interested in a lot of use case areas. Logistics, as an example, right? Graph theory, right? Graph problems, right? At the heart of that from an algorithm development standpoint, right? So graph problems and logistics are an area that folks are looking at. Even in finance, optimization or portfolio optimization, as an example. Those are areas that we have Q network partners working on in the financial industry.
Portfolio optimization,
Yes.
unbelievable. I never would have thought of it.
Yes, so portfolio optimization is, and there's been many articles published by our Q network members in that area from the financial institute. And so there's a lot of use cases that can be applied to quantum computing, but the real exciting part is to watch the community develop what those use cases are. And so by bringing the HBCU community into this mix, it just gives the HBCU community an opportunity to play in that game, right? And so it's a very exciting time. I would say that it is my hope that we provide quantum leaders and quantum entrepreneurs in the HBCU community. That is something that there is room for that. So I encourage young people to start to understand this field.
And you were saying for the young people that they can use a regular computer, so obviously there has to be some level of virtualization in place. So there's obviously some sort of middleware or interface connecting one to that quantum platform.
And so what it is the true experience, and the quantum software is the Qiskit software stack, and we use Jupyter notebooks, which these young people are very familiar with. And you can program a quantum computer. They use Python, and most of the young people today in these HBCUs understand what Python is. And so you can download a Jupyter notebook to their laptop, get a login to the IBM Q experience, and there's also the fundamental way that you program a quantum computer today is using what we call a quantum circuit. A quantum circuit it's essentially like the gates that you have seen in logical modeling in electrical engineering and computer engineering. So we're very early in quantum computing. And so to understand the gate model in quantum computing really gets you to the heart of the logic around creating the algorithms for quantum computing. But the companies are quickly moving up the stack, meaning right now, the gate model, even on classical systems, we don't necessarily today have to understand gate model logic to program quantum computers, to program classical computers today. And the same thing will happen in quantum computing. Right now, we're at the gate level, we're at the kernel level, right? And we're moving up the stack in terms of what we're laying on top of these quantum computers will allow people to be able to consume them. And so it's an exciting time to be in quantum computing because the opportunities are all around. They're around in creating the algorithms that folks can leverage to incent applications for quantum computing. There's also the opportunity of creating different quantum information science capabilities, either whether it's in sensing or whether it's networking or even in compute. There are several flavors of compute right now that folks have. An example, IBM use superconducting qubits, right? And superconducting qubits is a specific type of quantum computer, but there's also others. There's ion traps, and there's several other flavors out there that you can use for quantum processing. But at the end of the day, the point you made to take this back to chemistry, that was one of the original use cases, is to leverage a processing capability that can scale, right, to the many-body problem, right? Now, we're not there today because the number of qubits on some of these machines are at a level where we can't do really, really big problem, right? I mean, molecular work that's going on right now is lithium ions, right? I mean, it's not multi chemical reactions, but the technology is progressing. IBM has a roadmap that we published online where we're going to get to 1,000 qubits on our machines by 2024. And beyond that, we were targeting 1 million qubits in this decade. There's other companies out here that make quantum annealers, which is another type of quantum computing, and ion traps, and everybody has their roadmap. And so I encourage young people to really dig into this field. There's opportunity. Did I answer your question, sir?
Oh yeah, tremendously. I definitely have gotten more insight into a greater breadth of the code technologies, and as well as market that quantum computing touches. Something I wanted to add. As you all know, there are a lot of companies that do lithium mining, particularly in the Gulf, off the shore of Louisiana. A lot of lithium bromide mining goes on there. And the reason why I mention that is that I attend most of the world's mining conferences for either precious metals or essential metals, particularly lithium that's used in electronic vehicles. And there is a potential that maybe we could, talk at another date in collaborating some of those efforts, because a lot of capital investment is going towards the mining of lithium as well as other potential metals to produce batteries to effectively lower the cost of electronic vehicles as we begin to decommission internal combustion engines. All right.
Absolutely. So you know, and this kind of dovetails to kind of what I heard from Ron Ham and others about 5G and smarter cities. You know, batteries become very important when we have disconnected systems like electric vehicles, and they have to work autonomously, and there'll be charging stations that will these vehicles will use. All of the technology that we have around batteries today, you know, we all have cell phones. You know, we all know what it's like when our cell phone battery runs out and we can't charge it. So there's a lot that we need to understand about the chemistry associated with how batteries are developed. Now you talked about the supply chain of some of the components, but realistically, you know, what a quantum computer can do is create the state space available scale so we can understand things about the chemical reactions that we did not understand before in the past. And
well, one thing I'd like to add about that, when you're talking about battery science and technology, we're really talking about the area of electrochemistry. I used to work in an electroplating industry, and I was effectively an electrochemist dating back in the 80s and throughout the 90s. And that is an area in chemical science that is very underdeveloped and not very much research has been going on. As a matter of fact, electrochemistry and that area of sciences hasn't made too many leaps and bounds since the Egyptians were plating gold on sarcophaguses 3,000, 5,000 years ago. I'm just be perfectly honest with you. And it is in that area where we need to focus our research efforts. I used to do a lot of EPA methods and tests, and I can be one to tell you, you aren't going to find very many American science and testing materials or EPA methods or procedures that are dedicated to that at an advanced level. It's pretty classic electrochemistry. So a great deal of research in electrochemistry needs to be done at the academic level. You won't find very many academic institutions that even focus on that area of science. It's usually carried out by some third-party vendor or organization doing that type of research, like someone like me has done in the past. And these are some of the drawbacks and obstacles that we find in the electrochemistry space that ultimately impacted the development of batteries using lithium and other types of electrometals. All right?
So you're correct. I think that our military Army Research Lab, they have a significant battery program for size, weight, power for soldiers on the battlefield. And they have a Army Research Lab here located at the ARL headquarters. There's a lot of commercial companies looking at this chemistry, ExxonMobil, and many others who are looking at this. Everyone is probably very familiar with Tesla and Elon Musk and the work that they're doing with smart battery technology. There's significant research in those areas. What I would encourage the HBCU community to do is to get more engaged in those areas. We have a lot of folks that are working fundamental science on many body problems, physicists in the community, people like Dr. Searles, but there is opportunity for us to get into these fields, as you mentioned. But I will say that most chemical reactions and the way that we simulate how these things work today is using Monte Carlo methods, which is, those require, it's a modeling. It's
and
not
more statistical Monte Carlo, sure.
It's a statistical method to model what we think will occur. The difference between a quantum computer is we actually take the data associated with a process and we use the actual data in the state space. And so it gives us, ground truth, if you will. And that that's a different perspective than doing probabilistic modeling using a classical computer. Now, there is work in areas of quantum Monte Carlo code as well. So using a quantum computer to run a Monte Carlo simulation. People are doing those types of things on quantum computers.
Unbelievable.
There's an open source web page called QMCPAC, QMCPAC.org, which is a Qiskit community. And remember I mentioned that Qiskit was the program that allowed you to program quantum computers. It is an open source stack. We've open sourced the stack. And a lot of people are developing tools on it. And one of the tools is quantum Monte Carlo code called QMCPAC. Where they're literally taking their existing Monte Carlo code and running it on quantum computing. And so the website for that, I'll stick it in the chat.
Yeah, please do that.
It's qmcpac.org. And so there's just a tremendous amount of activity, mostly research and development with quantum computing today. And the amount of things that people are doing, you can go investigate this at the Qiskit .org website, which open source stack. And I mentioned before that quantum computers have different flavors, right? We use superconducting qubits. IonQ uses trapped ions as their processing element. Qiskit was just announced as a software stack to not only operate our superconducting qubit quantum computer, but also IonQ's trapped ion computer. And so, because the Qiskit stack is open stack, the idea is to make it ubiquitous. We can use other quantum computers, so you don't necessarily have to relearn the software stack every time you use a different one.
Yeah, this will be interesting. I'm gonna learn something, try to find out something about this, because for those who have some sort of background with operating systems, and as you all know, in operating systems, you're making calls to the machine, where you're not using high-level operating systems to or exclusive OR gates and that sort of thing. That's an area that a computer scientist without chemistry or research or laboratory background can delve into maybe that aspect of quantum computing.
So one example, and I don't have the slide here because I was just talking about the Hbcu community on this slide, on this presentation. But if you look at our roadmap for software, the idea is to, with our Q network, build out that whole stack, right? Modelers don't necessarily have to actually understand how to use the gate model to program a quantum computer. We have partners who make components that fit in that stack. One of them is ADA, as an example. And they have a process in which they work with the client, and they work through the process to help them program their application space in the quantum computer, and they have IP that helps them do that. There's a middleware software stack is the way you can think of it for quantum computer companies. And that concept is something that was relatively new. There's a lot that Zapata saw as a need. And of course, they work across multiple quantum computer stacks. And so that's the advantage of getting into quantum computing at this time, is that there's areas that need to be built up that aren't, frankly, there.
What effectively real-world applications that impact us maybe in the business, industrial, or residential space that we can get some quick turnaround time applying quantum computing technology?
So right now, this is what everyone asks, right? Because they see a lot of information about quantum computing, and they really don't kind of grasp what it can do for them, right? And the verdict is still out on quantum. Because we're still in the very early stages, we haven't built a large enough quantum computer that could actually take on a significant challenge.
Hey, Charles, can I
Yes.
I'm sorry, I tried to interrupt earlier, but I'm going to interrupt you here. We do have a lot of other questions.
We
to
can take the
and we're
conversation
gonna,
off set.
Yeah, we can talk. And I wanted to have a dialogue with the folks on the phone.
Yes, sir.
And so we can continue this conversation, but let's get to some of the others that may have questions.
I'll share my information with you here, okay?
Sure, no worries.
And you know, we'll pick up the conversation. And thank you, Michelai, for allowing us to correspond about the panel discussion. You'll see that I'm again re-entering my contact information, LinkedIn, and some other add-ons. Hey, nice talking to you, Mr. Robinson, and we'll be in touch.
No worries. Are there any other questions?
yeah, we have some questions from Perry in the chat that I'll just read out. We have about 7 minutes until we take a short break before our 2 p.m. session. So first question, what are the on-ramps for IBM's Hbcu Quantum Center next year?
So, good question. I know right now we're at 23 schools, and that will be expanding. Kayla Lee and Benita Zizuo are the leaders that have the list. They would be the best person to answer that question if you're an HBCU and want to get involved in the quantum computer program. And I'd ask you to contact me, and I will have them reach out to you so they can give you that information. Okay?
Absolutely. All right. So if you were to go back to junior or middle of high school, to junior or middle school, to your junior year of high school, or back to middle school, what would you tell yourself about quantum computing career paths during career day?
Oh wow, that's so when I was in high school, you know, we had we didn't take physics in high school. When I was in high school, we took chemistry, we took algebra 1 and 2, but you had to be one of the smart kids to get the physics. I think they taught it in the last year. It's not like today where kids are learning physics and calculus and AP classes from the 10th grade on, right? So the one thing I would say is I would start learning physics early. Now, I got a master's and a bachelor's in electrical and computer engineering, and one of the subjects that was always challenging for me was physics. And physics underpins kind of all what you do in electrical engineering. And so I would have started off a lot earlier in physics. And so one of the things that I did to address that, working with Perry and Dr. Bimley, you know, I saw that need for my children who all have STEM degrees. But I worked because of that. I worked for 7 years with Dr. Jesse Bimley in a joint education facility, which is a BDPA program, to teach inner city kids STEM programs at a much younger age. Because I think by the time you get to college, if you really haven't had that foundation of some of these advanced thoughts and topics, you wind up a little behind. And so the answer to your question, which is a really good one, is, you know, start out really early in STEM, find ways that you can get non-traditional education. An example would be the Joint Educational Facility, which is a program started by BDPA, which I volunteered for years. And there's many others out there, so you can get exposure in STEM at a very early age. And then the other is, you know, start organizing in terms of, you know, your group. I mean, one of the things that I tell young people is if you can't, you know, if you play basketball, you got a team that you can hang out with. You got a group that you can, you know, that you play with. If you're a STEM student, you need to have the same thing, because, you know, the strength in numbers, you learn faster when other people are interested in the things you're interested in. So, you know, the other thing I would say is start a STEM club. I mean, you know, it is cool to understand STEM. I mean, let's just be real about it, right? And so that's the other piece that I would add to young people. I mean, I spent a lot of time, like most, playing sports, playing football, playing basketball, and I did all of that. But if I had to go back, I would say carve out some time to really focus in on STEM. Like I focused on football and basketball and everything else when I was in school. I should have carved out more time for that. I was in, that's what I'd say. Any other questions?
Yeah, one more question before we wrap up and get to time. Over the next several years, how should municipalities prepare their respective technology roadmaps, skills training, and digital communication budgets to successfully migrate legacy systems into the quantum space?
So the one thing I want to make sure I caution all public sector people out there on the phone, right? We're still in the research and development phase in quantum, but no one can predict where the inflection point will come. You have to start. Most of these organizations like DC government or state of Maryland, or they have to plan out 5 years out, right? And so I'm actually on the Quantum Workforce Development, Quantum Economic Development Consortium Workforce Development Vice Technical Committee. And these are the things that we are working on writ large for the National Quantum Initiative. So I would encourage, one, anybody who's in a municipality who have to look at long-term what the vision is for their county, state, or local government, how they will be impacted by some of these technologies, to spend some of your time joining organizations like the Mid-Atlantic Quantum Alliance, which I am also a chair of the Diversity and Inclusion Committee in Maryland, which is started by the University of Maryland, or the Quantum Economic Development Consortium. These are industry consortiums which all of industry comes together to help organizations work through these types of issues. At the end of the day, you have to spend some time, just like the answer to the basketball thing, to the high school thing is, you have to spend some time trying to understand that market, and that shouldn't be in a vacuum, right? You should go where those folks are. And I'll just pause there. I will say that my role as the IBM public sector leader is to think long and hard about how IBM can help these organizations become quantum ready. And one example that we've been thinking about is there's a whole PE structure, professional engineering, and in every state and local, every state. And you have to take professional engineering licenses, and they have to get continuing education credits. And so we've been having conversations. Now, we're not there yet as far as quantum information science. It's still in the research phase. But we've been having conversations about how to include quantum workforce development for those who have graduated, right? And how that would look like across the public sector. Internal to IBM, as well as in the Quantum Economic Development Consortium and the Mid-Atlantic Quantum Alliance. And so those things that this person is asking, which is a very important question, and I haven't given him the answer to that, not that simple. Those things are exactly what folks are having dialogue about today on how these organizations can become quantum ready. So I'd like to take that offline because it's not as simple. This is the answer, but I would be interested to know who wanted to hear that, and I think that requires more dialogue. That makes sense.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Mr. Robinson. If you want to go ahead and drop your in or contact information in the chat for anybody who wants to reach out and connect with you. And again, from 2:30 to 3, we'll just be doing an open mic with all the presenters from today and any attendees who want to come back and ask any questions. All right. Thank you so much. Next up at 2 p.m., we'll have our chat with Barbara Hoffman, Samsung's Vice President and Head of Business to Government and Global Strategic Operations. We'll be chatting for about 25 minutes before we hop into that open mic. So we'll be right back to start promptly at 2. Thanks again, everyone. right, we can go ahead and get started. Like I said, I'm Michelai Graham, freelance business and technology reporter. I've been covering technology entrepreneurship around the DC area for the past 3 to 4 years. I've just expanded to cover these type of topics nationally when I went freelance 2 months ago. And I now work with Afrotech, LifeWire, The Plug, BDPA, and a few other publications. Want to go ahead and give an introduction? Tell us about the work that you do.
All right. Barbara Hoffman, and I am the Vice President at Samsung and head of the Business to Government division, and also support or manage the Global Strategic Operations. And what does that mean? That means that we work with the militaries and governments around the globe, offering them and helping them with technology solutions, primarily in the 5G environment. A little background on myself is I was 34 years in Department of Defense, primarily in the IT and business modernization. I noticed that my last few years in DoD, there was a lot of discussions and moves towards how do we take better use of commercial technology. DoD was struggling with how did it sustain its current infrastructure and a lot of its, government developed products and things like that. So since industry has such a great ability to do investment and the technology refresh is turning, as fast as almost every 6 months now. It used to be 12, 18, 24 months, but it seems like now it's about every 6 months. A little slower maybe with COVID the past year. So in 2018, when I retired, I joined Samsung, and my vision and hope was that I could give back to DoD and help Department of Defense with better utilization of commercial solutions in their various capabilities for military. This also includes, helping states, local governments, and even, outside of government industry. I would say that I'll start off with an example of some smart cities and smart technologies in hospitals around the globe, especially in South Korea. They have really, South Korea has been one of the leading countries as far as the implementation of 5G technology. Depending on how you look at it, they've probably got about 80% of South Korea now connected via 5G technology capabilities using sensors and things like that. So South Korea is really a leader in that area. Just by chance happens Samsung's headquarters is in South Korea. So Samsung has been quite extensively helping the South Korean government and the military and the citizens get connected. They have got some phenomenal hospitals and capabilities that they have deployed in some of their hospitals because they have implemented the 5G infrastructure, the back-end networks and systems. They have been able to take and connect their patients and doctors and the back-end administrative process to help patients be more at ease. They have learned, and this is true in the U.S. as well, that if a patient can really track and understand what is happening with testing, when doctors are going to come and visit, schedules, and kind of see what doctors have posted as far as notes and things in their files, it puts them a little more at ease. They're not, wondering, oh my goodness, am I going to sit here for 4 hours and, wait for the doctor to show up and things like that. So they give the patients wearables, smartwatches, tablets. They also have screens, displays in the rooms. And so the patient can, check on, what testing am I supposed to have done today? What blood work, sonogram, CAT scan, any of those tests. And it is also the hospitals have been able to use this capability now to help patients help doctors and help the nursing staff with better monitor, the queuing of things. Let's say they wanted you to have blood work, then they wanted you to have a CAT scan, and then they wanted you to go get an X-ray. Well, previously, you had all of the nurses sort of running around trying to find out, is the CAT scan machine open now? Is it available? I can bring, patient X in. So it's all digitized, all automated now, and it's all reading the sensors and the technology. So it helps patients know that, okay, at 9 o'clock, I'm supposed to get a CAT scan. Oops, there's a backlog. They ran into an issue, so we're going to send you for your X-ray or your blood work. So it's just keeping the patient constantly informed, and they're really seeing that this helps kind of decrease the stress and anxiety that patients experience in the hospital or when they're there for testing and things like that. It is also helping with a lot of moving gigantic files. Before, at least my experience, I can't say it's everyone's experience, you'd go to radiology or different things and they'd give you a CD or they'd give you some sort of a file, and you would carry it to another doctor's office or another spot in the hospital. So now they can digitally move these files because of the speed and capacity that the 5G infrastructure provides them. Samsung and some investing partners are looking at how we can help in Africa. They are building some new hospitals in Africa, and they really want to make them smart hospitals and smart cities. And so they are going to outfit, they're building a 5,000 bed hospital. They're going to, with the investment they have today, they're going to outfit about 2,000 of those beds with the technology of wearables, tablets, digital displays on the walls, and do very much what I mentioned that we have done in South Korea with the hospital. They also, in Africa, want to develop some satellite sites. So the plan now is to have 86 satellite doctors' offices where they can do telemedicine and help the local doctors' offices and clinics and things like that with understanding as people come in and they're sick, help with providing advice and assistance. And then they can feed all this information back to central repositories at the hospital. And through using artificial intelligence with companies like IBM, who has Watson, and there's many more artificial intelligence applications and companies out there. Watson's just the biggest. What they can do is they can take all this input that's coming from various clinics and other offices and take this data and start to do reviews and analytics and analysis. And so when we start to have, terrible outbreaks of like Ebola or maybe COVID cases or any sort of a pandemic outbreak, they can do better analysis of what they're seeing as far as, people, their symptoms, their environment, and start to help, with solutions to this. So it was really 5G and the technology we have today with wearables, tablets, and things like that are really starting to help the medical community immensely. And so we're really excited about some of these projects taking off in Africa and then migrating, more around the world. In the U.S., there are a few smart hospitals, or they're getting to be smart hospitals. The U.S. has a pretty strong infrastructure as far as medical care, and so modernizing a lot of these hospitals has been a little slower in the U.S. than we had hoped. Getting back to sort of DoD. And I had mentioned, DoD had a lot of sort of proprietary infrastructure development. They are looking at how can they take the technology of today with the sensors, the smartphones, the wearables, and artificial intelligence and help the military do more work out in the fields, remote areas, Vice having to collect all this information and then, transport it back to, a building or a central location to process that data. And so they're outfitting the military now with a lot of body-worn cameras, and this can help people that are, professional sharpshooters and things like that. They can use technology, cameras and phones to really zoom out much further and be able to better understand what is out there. They can collect video footage and things like that and send it back. They're using the autonomous, drone technology so that they can send drones out into very dangerous, rugged areas, mountainous areas, dense forestry and things like that, or disaster areas. And so the drone can fly out, Vice having human beings, and the drones can then send back, what it's seeing, video footage. It can be live, or it can gather it and bring it back, and then they can record it. But they're seeming to get the most use out of live video feeds, and that way, if you're looking for a bad guy, you can see that, well, maybe he's hiding in a cave or he's hiding in some very densely forest area, and so therefore it doesn't put our military members in harm's way. Organizations like Department of Homeland Security, FEMA, organization where whenever there's a disaster or a hurricane and events like that, earthquakes, they are now looking to how can they use this technology to go out and do much quicker assessments of situations. That way they can understand, what type of equipment they need to come in. They can help with finding human people. They can use heat sensing type capabilities to determine if people are trapped underneath concrete or within homes and buildings and things like that. And it also helps not sending, our first responders or government personnel, military personnel into harm's way until they can really assess what they're dealing with, whether it's floods, hurricanes, earthquakes, and things like that. So all this technology is really allowing our government and our first responders to have better eyes into what has happened, and they not have to venture out into this unknown, dangerous type territory. Some other, I'll get back to smart cities. You have probably heard or seen a lot of the testing of autonomous buses and vehicles and things like that in cities. But actually in 2018, when I joined Samsung and I was in South Korea, I got to participate in riding on one of their proof of concept autonomous buses that they had at the Olympics in 2018. And it was just amazing. For security purposes, they had, a person there just in case something happened. But you could, the bus was, being electronically tolled and driven, around the complex of the Olympics. People would get on and off the buses and things like that. So it is really an incredible technology. For cities, where it's most beneficial is if you have autonomous cars or buses and things like that, and there is, let's say, an accident or construction happened, it can inform the autonomous vehicles to take a detour and go down a different street. And therefore, you're not getting into delays with backup of traffic and stuff. For citizens like yourself and I, as we move around the city, you can, if you have, profiles or anything set up on various applications that a city could use, it could tell you where there are meal specials and things like that. For cars, it can help you better understand, the traffic that is happening in the cities. They are hoping that as autonomous vehicles are better accepted and with 5G becoming more ubiquitous, 5G is still very early stages in the US. Not everybody has it. We have quite a few cities that are starting to deploy it, but it is still, 5G is still in its very, very early stages in the US. And so as 5G becomes ubiquitous, meaning it's everywhere, and the cars can talk to the cars when you're on highways and freeways and things like that, the cars can communicate between the cars and help avoid accidents and things like that. Or if there is something that the cars and the sensors are picking up on as far as a conflict, it can help slow the traffic to avoid, people rear-ending each other or collisions and things like that. Mm-hmm. So as we, the U.S., get more prolific in our 5G deployment capability, really looking forward to seeing more autonomous vehicles and things like that. In some of the cities, you've probably heard or seen some of the public utilities like trash disposal, trash collection, and things like that. They're now putting sensors on a lot of the trash cans and things like that, so that they're making their workforce, their sanitational engineers, more efficient. They're not having to stop everywhere they go. They go to where the sensors and things are. And so this is helping to make the collection of our waste and things like that much more efficient. Also, South Korea had a lot of mutual benefit as a city from this. When COVID broke out, they had applications on their phones and wearable devices where they could help, and they used what's called the IP address on their watches or phones. And if there was an outbreak or somebody tested positive for COVID, they could, and completely keeping everything private because you're using the IP address, they could be able to alert people that had come within a certain radius of you, saying this IP address, it's a person, this IP address has just recently tested positive for COVID. You should monitor your symptoms, for the next few days or so to ensure that, you don't have it, or maybe self-quarantine. So they have used that greatly for COVID. Also, Samsung was able to help Ford Motor Company and a few other companies like that have warehouse workers and assembly workers. So the same concept. They provided them with a wearable, and they had the IP addresses of all the wearables. And that way, if on the assembly line or in the warehouse someone tested positive for COVID, they would alert the other workers that had maybe come in contact with them in the lunchroom or in a hallway, or as they went down an aisle or something like that, that someone has tested positive according to our tracking of the IP address on the wearables. You have come in contact with them, and we want you to be conscious of it and, take precautions. Don't be careful if you go home. Don't take it home to your family and things like that. So it was very effective to help Ford Motor Company and the warehouse and factories sort of get back to work, because it was a way to help keep the employees safe and a way to help keep families and stuff safe as well. Oil and gas industry has done some similar things. They've been using the wearable technology to help track some of their workforce that have to go into very rural, remote areas, like in Alaska or various very remote areas in Michigan and things like that. And that way, if there was an incident, mudslide, snowstorm, anything Mother Nature wise, they lost contact with the person, they could be able to track them using their wearable or their phone, their last known coordinates, and then they could be able to send out search and rescue and find them in a much quicker capacity. So that has been very beneficial to companies, oil and gas, and companies that do work remotely or have transportation vehicles and things like that. So another form of worker safety and worker benefit. Back to our military.
Let me interject here. I want to ask you a question that Perry's posted in the chat. You have an extensive knowledge of smart city technology, but for small businesses, are there sales or system integration opportunities across public sector with Samsung?
I would say with Samsung or with third parties that deal with Samsung, they are always in the market for applications that can help citizens in a city, help with worker safety, help with helping our elderly and things like that. We have quite a few companies that are coming up with applications that can help elderly with tracking as far as your vitals, diabetes, blood pressure, and things like that. So for small businesses, the development of applications that could, the development of a concept that could be turned into an application that could be put onto a wearable, a smartphone, a tablet that people could use for health or tracking are always of great interest.
Absolutely. Another question when it comes to smart cities, we're going to get back on the smart city topic. I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on this. As we, have all these technological advances in different cities, especially when it comes to government and military, how can these bigger corporations help avoid widening the digital divide? We have a lot of communities, especially low-income communities, who still struggle to get proper broadband access. As we advance with all these technologies, how can we avoid widening the digital divide and essentially separating people from these bigger opportunities?
Now that is a fabulous, fabulous question, and Samsung USA, part of Samsung from headquarters South Korea, is participating and watching and tracking and monitoring very closely with what the government is doing with all of their grants and funds to help deploy, technology, bandwidth, capabilities, devices to rural areas. COVID has been such a horrendous incident on our children, our students, the elderly, and all sorts of just categories of citizens. And the students that were worst, impacted the worst were our students in remote areas where they couldn't go to school because of COVID. They did not have any sort of connectivity. And so, a lot of the carriers, Verizon, AT&T, T-Mobile, were working with, companies like Samsung, like Microsoft, as to how can they, initially put in hotspots and capabilities where, the students could go to, into the parking lots of schools or into potentially local police, fire, rescue stations, and get a connection so that they could participate in online schooling. And then you have also the teachers that were impacted, because if they didn't have connectivity at home, they would have to go into the school or different things to try and teach their class. And then they also had the complication of their children, and they were trying to get their children to participate in their classes. So for the U.S., the capability, the interest, encouragement of industry and partnership with the government has really been of high priority and of the greatest discussion as to how can we get greater capability out and how can we move 5G faster out to these areas, because you can do it, you can use wireless antennas and things like that. You don't have to go and dig the trenches and lay the fiber or, climb telephone poles and have it, strung from pole to pole to pole. You can use antennas that do line of sight transmission that can create this sort of electronic mesh network to provide the capability. So really working, how can we deploy it much faster? COVID hasn't helped because it has reduced the manufacturing of a lot of the equipment that's needed to deploy it. But now that the COVID vaccinations are starting to become administered and deployed across the nation, hopefully we see some relief and we see the 5G capability picking up and providing this capability to our remote areas for our students, our teachers, our elderly.
Absolutely. All right, I'm going to wrap up with this question before we hop into Q&A, which I believe it'll be more open and participants can hop on the camera and other panelists from previous discussions may hop on. But with 5G, Wi-Fi, broadband, autonomous vehicles, we even talked about drones earlier today. Where do you see our society going with the next generation infrastructure?
I believe I see our society becoming greatly more connected, the ability to share more information, keeping our citizens, our elderly much more connected. There are quite a few projects to help with our Medicare and Medicaid citizens, the elderly, to get them more plugged into doing remote telemedicine, where they even now have particular companies are working with Medicare and Medicaid where they are giving the elderly, they write a prescription and they can get a cell phone, they can get a tablet, they can get a wearable. And the wearable would be used to monitor, heart rate, diabetes, things like that. But the tablet or the cell phone is so that they can do, communications with the doctors, not have to physically go in, but they can, type on their phone, type on their tablet, any sort of events that are happening with them so that they can communicate that to their doctor. The doctor can monitor it. They can do online chat. They can do online, doctor's visits. They don't have to physically go in if they don't have the ability to, drive and get there. A lot of the elderly, they don't like to drive in the out there on the roads today. But then it gets back into the question you just asked is, what if we don't have the connectivity? So, we've got a little bit of this catch-2 situation. So, we all are putting a whole lot of stock and belief into our, our telecommunication carriers and all the definitely the big 3, but also a lot of the smaller telecommunication carriers to help get that infrastructure out and, move into a more 5G wireless type environment, vice the wired environment. Thank goodness all of the technology, the computers, the tablets, the cell phones and things can be backwards compatible, so it can work on 3G, 4G, and 5G. And Wi-Fi and things like that. So I think the future, you're going to see a lot more customer care for our citizens, our students, and just citizens in general, because they will be able to now pick and choose. Do I want to physically go into a doctor's office, or do I physically want to go in somewhere and do it, or do I want to do it remotely? And so I see COVID bad as a terrible bad thing, but it has also opened the door to help restaurants, schools, industry to develop more online capabilities and applications and solutions. Who would ever have thought you could drive up to Target and sit in the parking lot and, you know, they bring your stuff out to you? You know, it's you know, opened up all these new markets and opportunities. So that's where I see you know, small businesses could look around and see where is there a problem, and, you know, develop a solution or an application that could be used, could be picked up and help with more remote, you know, sort of capabilities that we're all seeing. Hopefully we don't have anything bad like COVID the past 12 plus months we had, but you don't know. We could have another pandemic.
I'm hoping not. But thank you so much for your insight. I appreciate chatting with you today. Perry is coming on right now, probably to give some final remarks. But again, thank you so much. There's still some questions in the chat. I'm sure Perry wants you to talk about over the next 30 minutes, but this was a great discussion. I appreciate it.
It won't be 30 minutes. I think we've addressed most of them.
Yeah.
Was there anyone that you thought we needed to highlight? Let me go back, scroll up.
I tried to call out the ones that she didn't touch on. I mean, she pretty much touched
on
those in the beginning.
Yeah, the one. Well, Michelai, you brought this up yesterday as well. So, Barb, thanks so much again for this insight. It's been very insightful, and hopefully, I can't wait till we all get back together in person. You know.
Yes.
So, one of the things I think we touched on, and we can close out this afternoon with, had to do with getting more women in STEM. So one of the questions was, how can our industry help more women embrace STEM, telecom, and related infrastructure deployments, especially as an exciting career? You know, what can we, even for us, BDPA, how can we reach our middle school students and high school students and say, hey, you know, this is very exciting. Your generation is going to experience probably the greatest change in this ecosystem than anyone else has ever experienced. So how can we get that out to the young ladies?
Yeah, I think, you know, when I was in DOD, there were quite a few committees and projects that I participated in that, and, you know, things like AFCEA that would encourage young females to get into math, technology, and things like that. They would hold and host events. When I was in DOD, I took my child's Cisco class into the Pentagon to learn about, you know, the networks, the data centers, and technology, security. And it was very interesting. Out of the 90 kids, only 15 were females. And so, you know, it was very eye-opening, you know, that out of the 90 kids from 12th grade all the way down to 9th grade, only 15 were females in the program. It was mostly male. And so, you know, we stressed to them that, you know, they needed to talk with their younger siblings or cousins or, you know, just neighbors, and that, you know, they needed to try to do their best and excel in math, get help. There's tutoring. There's, you know, so, you know, the schools have a lot of offerings for helping students if they are struggling in math or scared of math. But when you get on the outside, Samsung does have, and it doesn't fall within my group, but they do have a lot of programs where they help communities try to offer advice, technology advice to, you know, to women, to females for STEM and things like that. COVID has been interesting. It sort of didn't allow us to do as many events as we historically had done, probably back in 2019. But I know that as we move out of this COVID environment, hopefully we will start to see a lot of those activities come back to life, where we are encouraging, young women to participate. And I think you really need to get them at the middle school and even elementary school levels. By the time you get them at the high school level, it may be too late, because they've already had so many years of schooling, and they're either doing well in math or they're not. And so I think we really, for STEM and for women in those areas, we really need to target much earlier in their educational years and things like that.
Yes, ma'am. In fact, Charles has joined us as well. Charles, a question we had, just as for the open session here, was helping young ladies get more involved in our industry, the ICT industry, telecommunications, STEM, so that they can have, opportunities for this exciting paradigm shift that our society is going through right now.
So if I had to comment on that, can you hear me, Perry?
Yes, sir. Very well. Yep.
And so again, for those who weren't on my session, BDPA has been at the forefront of that. In particular, helping young people get early access to STEM education through the JEF program, which is a K through 12 program started by Dr. Jesse Dimley in Southeast DC. And that program's goal was to expose minority students to STEM skills at a very young age, like I said, from K through 12. And some of the folks who participated in that program went on to start their own companies. One gentleman who I taught C programming in the 4th grade went on to become an ethical hacker at NSA, didn't even graduate from college, started his own company called Fly, because he started to learn how to program in the 4th grade. By the time he graduated from high school, he knew 3 languages. And so I agree with Ms. Hoffman that in order for young people to really make an impact in STEM, they need to start early. And so as I mentioned in my conversation on my talk, that folks out there should find programs which are out there to expose young people to the STEM field at a much earlier age. I'll pause there, Perry.
Yeah, definitely. In fact, Charles, there's FYI, Barb attended one of our national conferences in Chicago a few years ago. And again, we had a good mix, very diverse, a lot of young women. And to the point, a lot of them have gone on, they've received master's degrees, some have received their PhDs through Dr. Dimley's program. And Barb, his program was really focused on advanced computational skill sets, advanced mathematics. And of course, he was the one that launched both the National High School Computer Competition Program and our IT Showcase, which students who don't code are required to do a research paper, then prepare a white paper from that research, and then present that as a single poster to a panel of judges like yourselves during the National IT Showcase. And so it's been very, very successful programming on Dr. Dimley's part. And that's a great program,
And one other point I want to make, Dr. Jesse Dimley, who is a Georgia Tech PhD, who is now a professor at Morgan State University, I believe it's Morgan State, was a member of my class as a young woman who I taught programming, and she had a propensity better than most of the males with her seriousness, and so it's just a proof point that that there's no limit to what females can do in this space. And,
sorry, Charles, we're getting some background noise.
Yeah, well, I'm going to put mine up on mute.
Don't.
Charles, you're too funny, man. We need to hear you, man. We do need to hear you.
I just don't think it was me. It was a test, right? So I don't think it was coming from me because it was still coming through the feed.
No, it had stopped, but this is great. It seems to be on now, so continue on. I'm sorry.
No worries. I think going back to what you're saying, Mrs. Hoffman, the fact that there was only 20 young ladies that came to the visit really shows that we need to do a better job as leaders in the STEM community of making the STEM environment more welcoming to young women.
I agree. Yes. How do we make it more appealing to them?
And again, part of it, I think Barb alluded to, even the time when we were all at DOD in the Pentagon area, when we started opening up some of the combatant opportunities for women, our society also went through a paradigm shift as well. So some of the combatant commands with respect to cyber, those have now moved into more of a combat-oriented type of mission set. And the competitive nature of that, I think, will attract more to the field. We're hoping that as well. Because even when you look at sports, we're trying to get more young men and women involved in sports. I know earlier Harry touched on drone racing. I think if we can work with local, Charles, you and I grew up with the Police Athletic League in Philadelphia. But if we were able to go ahead and put together a package for Congress and develop a police technology league, then we can even encourage the drone racing in there. We can definitely leverage the 5G platform, get young men and women involved in sensors. But at the end of the day, you want these young kids involved in something. As you always heard, pardon me, an idle mind is the devil's workshop. So let's keep everybody busy. Mm-hmm. That's really what we need. So if we get the young girls busy, they should have a good time.
Yeah. And challenge them, with all the smart capabilities that are out there, especially in wearables. I think that is very underdeveloped. Yes. We get a lot of requests from, DoD, from military about more applications for wearables. Hydration has been one that we have been struggling with. I think we've got a few that are coming out, but when we've got our kids that are in sports, they're doing football or soccer or whatever sport they're doing, and it's the middle of the summer, they can get dehydrated so easily. And if you can catch them before they get to a certain point in dehydration, you could have them sit, under a tree or something, drink a bottle of water, take an hour, get themselves together. But, once they kind of cross that critical point, it could be, a day, days, or even, a couple of weeks before they can, get back, depending on how critical the dehydration can be. You've got this same problem, for professional athletes, for people that work in any sort of an environment like the luggage handlers, at airports. They're out in the sun all day long, slinging the, suitcases and things like that. And people that are out doing maintenance, roads, construction, people that are doing highways, laying the asphalt and things like that. So many requests we're getting for applications for wearables that can pertain to health and wellness. And so, just so many opportunities, and the young kids, their minds are just limitless. They have no buffers, nothing prohibiting them. So I think if they can think about, wow, this would be a good application, this would be a good application, I think it really opens the door and market in the future for much more solutions that can go on wearables for us, because the wearable technology is just improving greatly every year. More and more sensors, much more sensitive sensors that can really pick up, via the contact with the skin and things like that, just what's going on with your vitals and things like that. So definitely, a very growing area in wearables and applications.
And Barb, that's very, very timely, because one of the things that was mentioned earlier in one of our panels, we had Ms. Anissa Lumpkin from Air Force Research Lab, and we're always looking for SBIRs and STTRs. And so the schools that I know Charles mentioned in his presentation, the Hbcu engagements, that's an ideal mix where you can get that strategic triad, public sector, private sector, and academia, working on solutions. Wearables could be some of the new innovations that all of the services could use. And to your point, phase 3 of those programs is commercialization. So if it works for the warfighter, it can definitely work for people that support the airlines. It can definitely work for the logisticians that support all of the, I would say, transportation companies such as FedEx and UPS, for example. But that's exciting. And then I think the last piece before we close out here is that the wearables may open up new avenues for the young men and women that are interested in fashion. Because, you know, I don't care how sexy you make it or how techy or you want to geek out with it, it has to look good.
That's right. Let's put some bling on that watch band.
Absolutely. But I just think, like I said, the sky's the limit. And, you know, on that note, I think, I see Mr. Scott, Mr. Quince, you guys have any more last minute questions before I get the hook here? I think 12:45 is my signal. I'm sorry, 2:45. Nothing from Keith? Nothing from Mr. Quince?
Perry, I did want to say something about the HBCU community.
Oh, somebody asked me.
Your device is ready for setup. Just follow the instructions.
I'm sorry, I walked away.
Oh, no, sir. No, sir. We were just asking for we're about to close, and we just want to make sure we address everyone's questions. And Mr. Robinson was about to talk about his closing remarks for HBCUs.
So there's a lot of research that is going on in the HBCU community. Hidden jewels is what I call them. You talked about, as an example, sports, and you talked about wearables. Howard University has been doing research in accelerometers underneath the football helmets to track concussions, and that's something that is applicable for DoD use case for munition shock. And so a lot of folks aren't aware of those kinds of activities, and those activities are taking place in our HBCU community. So, Perry, to your point, having that umbrella program to expose that kind of research to the DoD environment is something that is absolutely critical.
Because of the wide use of cyberspace and our dependence on it, we have an inherent vulnerability, and that's why it's vital that we defend it properly. Generally, in warfare, you have an organized enemy, a force that's mobilized by a country, has a nation's backing. The cyberspace attacks can occur on an individual basis. Anybody with a $200 laptop and the right skill sets can go in and wreak havoc in cyberspace. Some examples of where you would find cyberspace are the control of power systems. Nuclear power is regulated through the use of computers. Your water system is regulated through computer systems. Because we operate so much in cyberspace, that is the new battlefield. It's constantly changing, and therefore we need to be able to adapt and overcome the problems that we face in cyberspace. And the Air Force is there to answer that call. In the future, this is going to be the premier warfighting domain. This is going to be where the major battles occur. I'm Captain Scott Hink, and I'm an Air Force Cyber Warrior.
Michelai, all yours, ma'am.
All right, thank you guys so much for joining us today. This wraps up our second day of the Earth Day Summit. Perry will be continuing on tomorrow. I will not be a part of tomorrow, unfortunately. But we had some great discussions today. Still drones are top of mind. Some 5G and smart city talk. All of these discussions have been recorded, and they will be up on BDPA's YouTube. Perry, do you have anything else you want to add?
No, real quick, tomorrow is Career Day. This is where all the kids and the youth and the parents participate. We have State Department, NOAA, and Cybercom. And then we wrap up with one or two presentations from the junior ROTC team and our high school computer competition team here in Washington. And again, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. We hope you have a great day. And again, Barb, Charles, Mr. Quince, I never did get a chance to pronounce your first name, but I really appreciate your input and insight today. And of course,
I'll help out. That's Lawan.
Got it. Thank you, sir. And Michelai, thanks so much for moderating, and you all have a great weekend.
Have a good weekend, everybody.
Hey, guys.
Been great. Been wonderful.
Thank you.
Every year, we come together here, marvel at the view, and strengthen our resolve to preserve it. This year, we arrive again. Our ambitions are bigger because our obligations are too large to measure, and our opportunities too substantial to squander. At Microsoft, we bring unparalleled sustainability commitments to over 33 million square feet of real estate around the world, creating modern workplaces where nature is the building block of our designs. Because thinking sustainably, building sustainably, living sustainably, and working sustainably is in our nature. So this year, let's commit ourselves to making Earth Day every day.